Jungkook stood alone as Jimin chose silence, a love-left unfinished broken heart. The microphone hit the stage with a hollow crack, and Jungkook's voice followed it into the dark. "Say something, Jimin, anything," he breathed, the plea swallowed by the roar of the crowd and the blinding white lights that refused to dim. The arena smelled of ozone and warm metal, of sweat and electricity. Jungkook stood at center stage, hands trembling, eyes searching the wings where he knew Jimin was standing just out of sight. The band's last chord still vibrated through the floor, but the silence between them was louder than any scream. Cameras zoomed in. 1,000 phones lifted. Somewhere backstage, Jimin's shadow moved and then stopped. Jungkook swallowed, his throat raw. He had practiced every version of this moment in his head, every possible reaction. He had never practiced for nothing. Earlier that night, everything had felt fragile but intact. Jungkook had paced the hallway, tapping his ring against his knuckle, a nervous habit he'd never broken, counting his breaths in fours the way Jimin once taught him when panic clawed too close. He remembered the faint citrus scent of Jimin's cologne when they brushed past each other, the way Jimin avoided his eyes, jaw set like he was bracing for impact. They had not spoken in weeks, not really. Messages typed and deleted, calls that rang out, silence that grew teeth. Jimin's silence was not emptiness, it was armor. He had learned long ago that words could ruin everything. Raised voices, careless confessions, headlines that bled private truths into public spectacle. Jimin believed that if he stayed quiet long enough, the storm would pass. He believed love could survive unspoken, hidden in glances and half-smiles, protected by restraint. Jungkook believed the opposite. He believed love rotted in the dark. On stage now, Jungkook forced himself to breathe. The lights burned his eyes, turning the crowd into a shimmering blur. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, loud and uneven. He remembered the first time he'd realized he loved Jimin, not in a grand moment, but in a quiet one, watching Jimin tie his shoes before practice, humming under his breath, unaware of being watched. Love had entered him softly. Losing it was loud. "Jimin," Jungkook said again, not into the microphone this time, but into the vast space between them. The word tasted like a bruise. Backstage, Jimin stood with his hands clenched at his sides. The monitors showed Jungkook's face too clearly, eyes shining, mouth set with stubborn hope. Jimin felt the familiar pull to step forward, to fix things, to be the one who softened the fall. But fear pressed heavy against his chest. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of confirming what everyone suspected. Fear that once spoken, love would demand a future Jimin wasn't sure he could protect. Memories crowded in uninvited. Late-night rehearsals when Jungkook laughed too loudly. Shared earbuds on long flights. Arguments whispered in hallways, always ending with Jimin's silence and Jungkook's tears. Jimin told himself silence was mercy. He told himself Jungkook would understand. He didn't see how Jungkook's shoulders sagged when the seconds stretched too long. On stage, Jungkook picked the microphone back up. His hands steadied, not because the pain faded, but because it sharpened into resolve. "You don't have to choose me," he said softly, every word precise. "But don't pretend this meant nothing." The crowd hushed, sensing something real cracking open. Jungkook's voice did not break. That hurt more. Jimin closed his eyes. The silence he chose felt suddenly cruel, heavy with everything he refused to say. He could step out now. He could speak. He imagined the relief, the release. He also imagined the aftermath, the scrutiny, the risk, the possibility of ruining not just them, but everything around them. When he opened his eyes, he stayed where he was. The song ended without him. Jungkook bowed to the audience alone. The applause thundered, but it felt distant, like rain against glass. As he walked off stage, the hallway lights flickered, and for a heartbeat, he and Jimin stood facing each other, only a few steps apart. No cameras, no crowd, just the quiet. Jungkook searched Jimin's face, reading the familiar signs, the tight mouth, the guarded eyes. "I waited," Jungkook said, not accusing, just tired. "I always wait." Jimin's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I know." The words were inadequate. They always had been. Jungkook nodded slowly. He noticed, absurdly, that Jimin's hands were shaking. He wanted to take them, to anchor both of them in something solid. Instead, he stepped back. The air between them felt colder. "I can't keep loving a silence," Jungkook said. There was no anger left in it, only truth. He turned and walked away, footsteps echoing down the corridor, each one a small surrender. Jimin watched him go, chest aching with everything he hadn't said. He told himself this was safer. He told himself silence was still a choice, still a form of care. But as Jungkook disappeared around the corner, the quiet felt less like protection and more like loss. That night, the world saw a performance. What it didn't see was the love left unfinished, suspended in the space between a voice that reached out and a silence that answered back. The hallway door slammed somewhere behind Jungkook, the sound ricocheting through the concrete corridors like a gunshot. He didn't stop walking. His pulse thundered too loud, his jaw locked so tight it ached. The echo of applause still clung to him, mocking, unreal, as if the night itself refused to let go. "Jungkook, wait." Jimin's voice cut through the noise, sharp with panic. That alone made Jungkook stop. He turned slowly. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting Jimin's face in harsh white and shadow. For the first time all night, Jimin was running, not on stage, not from cameras, but toward him. That detail lodged itself painfully in Jungkook's chest. "You found your voice now," Jungkook said, quiet but lethal. Jimin halted a few steps away, breath uneven. His hands moved restlessly, a habit he slipped into when cornered. "Don't do this here." A humorless laugh escaped Jungkook. "Here," he gestured around them. "You mean the place where you left me standing alone." Staff passed at the far end of the hall, slowing, sensing the tension. Whispers began immediately. Someone lifted a phone, then thought better of it. Jimin lowered his voice. "I didn't plan for it to happen like that." "You planned for nothing," Jungkook shot back. His eyes burned, not with tears yet, but with something more dangerous. "That's the problem. You always let things happen to us, and then you call it fate." Jimin flinched. The words hit closer than Jungkook knew. They moved into a small rehearsal room, the door closing behind them with a dull thud. The air smelled of dust and old wood. Of countless arguments absorbed by the walls. Silence pressed in, thick and uncomfortable. Jimin spoke first, his voice raw. "Do you have any idea what would have happened if I'd walked out there?" "Yes," Jungkook snapped. "Something honest." "That's not how the world works for us." Jungkook stepped closer, close enough that Jimin had to tilt his head up. "No, that's how it works for you. Silence is your shield. I'm the one who bleeds." Jimin's eyes darkened. "You think I don't bleed? Then why do I always feel like I'm hurting alone?" The question hung between them, heavy and unanswered. Jimin turned away, dragging a hand through his hair. His shoulders sagged, the composed image cracking. "I grew up watching people lose everything because they said the wrong thing," Jimin said. "Careers, families, themselves. I learned early that quiet keeps you safe." Jungkook's voice softened, but only slightly. "Safe from what? Loving me." Jimin closed his eyes. That was the truth he'd been avoiding. "You don't get it," Jimin said. "You still believe the world can be kind." "I believe it's already cruel," Jungkook replied. "So why are we helping it?" Jimin faced him again, anger flaring now, sharp and desperate. "Because I'm trying to protect you." Jungkook shook his head. "No, you're protecting the version of you that never has to choose." The accusation landed hard. Jimin's mouth opened, then closed. His silence this time wasn't armor, it was surrender. A knock interrupted them. "5 minutes," a manager's voice called, tense and strained. "We need you both." Jungkook didn't look away from Jimin. "Tell them I'm not ready." The footsteps retreated. The building seemed to breathe around them. Jimin stepped forward suddenly, voice breaking through restraint. "I love you." The words came out fractured, rushed, as if dragged free against his will. Jungkook froze, heart lurching violently. "Don't," Jungkook said hoarsely. "Don't say it now like it fixes everything." "I needed you to hear it," Jimin insisted. "Even if that's all I can give." Jungkook's laugh was sharp, pained. "That's the problem. You give love like it's a secret apology." He took a step back, distance returning like a wound reopening. I can't build a life on words you only say when you're cornered. Jimin reached out, fingers brushing Jungkook's sleeve. The touch was electric, familiar, devastating. Please just stay. Jungkook looked down at the hand, then back at Jimin's face, the fear finally visible, naked and unguarded. For a moment, everything in him screamed to stay, to fold back into the comfort of what they'd always been. Instead, he gently removed Jimin's hand. I've been staying, Jungkook said. Tonight was me finally standing. He opened the door. Noise rushed in, voices, movement, reality. Jimin stood frozen behind him, the confession still hanging uselessly in the air. As Jungkook walked away, he felt the loss settle in fully, heavy and irreversible. Not because love was gone, but because it was finally undeniable that love alone had never been enough. Behind him, Jimin remained in the room, surrounded by the echo of his own words, realizing too late that silence, once broken, could no longer save what it had already cost him. The rain began without warning, pounding against the glass walls of the underground parking garage as Jungkook leaned against his car, palms flat on the hood, breathing like he'd just survived a crash. The world felt too loud, too bright, even down here. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He didn't need to look to know who it was. He closed his eyes. Get in the car, he muttered to himself. Just go. The phone vibrated again, then again. Finally, he answered. What? There was silence on the other end, thick and familiar. Then Jimin's voice, stripped of all polish. If you leave now, I think this time you won't come back. Jungkook laughed under his breath, bitter. You say that like it's a surprise. I'm serious, Jimin said. Please, don't hang up. Jungkook stared at the rain sliding down the concrete walls. You chose silence on a stage with 10,000 people watching. Why are you so loud now? Because I'm terrified, Jimin snapped, the word cracking open something raw. Because I finally understand what it costs. That understanding came late. I know, Jimin said, and I hate myself for it. Jungkook's chest tightened. He hated how easily those words still reached him. Self-hate doesn't make you brave. No, Jimin agreed, but maybe losing you will. That made Jungkook still. Where are you? Jungkook asked quietly. On the roof, Jimin said, where we used to hide. Jungkook ended the call without answering, cursed under his breath, then slammed his car door shut. The elevator ride up felt endless, every floor a countdown he hadn't agreed to start. The rooftop was slick with rain, city lights bleeding into the night like spilled paint. Jimin stood near the edge, coat soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes red and unguarded. He turned when he heard the door. You came, Jimin said, disbelief and relief colliding. I came to end this, Jungkook replied, not to save it. Jimin nodded, swallowing hard. Then let me finally be honest. The wind whipped between them, carrying the scent of rain and concrete. Jungkook crossed his arms, bracing himself. I wasn't silent because I didn't love you, Jimin said. I was silent because loving you made everything real, and real things can be taken away. Jungkook's voice cut in sharp. So you took it away first. Yes, Jimin said, because I thought control would hurt less than loss. Jungkook stepped closer, rain soaking into his clothes, his voice rising. Do you know what it's like to beg someone with your eyes while they look through you? To feel like your love is an inconvenience? Jimin's face crumpled. I never meant. But you did, Jungkook said. Every time you chose quiet over me. Jimin shook his head, tears mixing with rain. I thought if I stayed silent, I could keep us alive in some hidden way. Love doesn't breathe in hiding, Jungkook said. It suffocates. The words landed hard. Jimin took a shaky step forward. I'm not asking you to stay the same. I'm asking you to see me now. I'm choosing you out loud. Jungkook looked at him, really looked. No armor, no careful pauses, just a man standing exposed in the rain. And what happens tomorrow? Jungkook asked. When the fear comes back, when the world gets loud again. Jimin didn't look away. Then I fight it. I don't promise perfection, I promise presence. Jungkook felt tears sting his eyes, furious at himself for it. You can't promise that now just because you're afraid of losing me. I'm afraid, Jimin said, but I'm also done hiding. Silence fell between them again, but this one was different, heavy, honest. Jungkook's shoulders slumped, exhaustion washing over him. I love you, Jungkook said softly. That's never been the problem. Jimin's breath hitched. Then, but love isn't enough if I'm always alone inside it, Jungkook finished. Jimin closed his eyes, a sob breaking free. So this is it. Jungkook nodded slowly. This is me choosing myself. Jimin stepped forward anyway, stopping just short of touching him. Then let me say this once without fear, without silence. He met Jungkook's eyes. You were never too much. I was just too scared. Jungkook felt the words carve themselves into him. He reached out, cupped Jimin's cheek briefly, tender and final. I hope one day you're brave with someone who stays. He turned away before he could change his mind. As Jungkook disappeared back through the door, the rain kept falling, relentless and cleansing. Jimin remained on the rooftop, breath shaking, finally understanding that silence had protected him from the world. But it had cost him the one person who had been willing to stand in it with him. Morning came cruelly bright, the kind of light that made everything too clear to ignore. Jungkook sat at the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, staring at his phone like it might confess something if he waited long enough. It stayed silent. For once, the silence wasn't Jimin's, it was his. He showered, dressed, moved through the apartment on autopilot. Coffee tasted like nothing. Every familiar object felt slightly wrong, like it belonged to a life he'd already stepped out of. When his phone finally buzzed, it was Jimin. It was a message from management, clipped and urgent, asking him to come in early. The conference room was cold, glass walls exposing them to passing staff who pretended not to look. Jimin was already there. Jungkook stopped just inside the door. For a split second, instinct pulled him forward. Habit, muscle memory. Then he caught himself and took the chair farthest away. Jimin noticed. Of course he did. We need to address last night, the manager said, voice tight. Clips are everywhere. Speculation is intense. Jungkook leaned back, arms crossed. Let them speculate. This isn't just gossip, another voice cut in sharper. It's being framed as conflict, as betrayal. Jimin's jaw tightened. He hadn't looked at Jungkook yet. Say something, Jungkook said suddenly, not to Jimin but to the room. Isn't that the theme? The manager cleared his throat. We're asking both of you to release a joint statement. Calm things down. Jimin finally looked up. His eyes met Jungkook, searching, cautious. A statement could help. Jungkook laughed softly. Funny how words matter now. Jimin flinched. This isn't the time. When was? Jungkook shot back. The room went still. You want a statement, fine, but I'm done pretending. The manager stiffened. Jungkook. No, Jungkook said. I'm not burning anything down, I'm just not lying. Jimin's voice dropped, urgent. Please, not like this. Jungkook turned to him fully, heat rising. Then how, quietly, carefully, so no one gets uncomfortable. Jimin stood abruptly, chair scraping. This isn't about comfort, it's about consequences. For who? Jungkook asked. You. The word hit like a slap. Jimin's face flushed, anger and shame colliding. You think I don't pay for this? I think you choose which price you're willing to pay, Jungkook said. And it's never us. Silence filled the room again, thick and suffocating. The managers exchanged uneasy glances. Take a break, one of them said quickly. Both of you. Jungkook was already standing. He walked out without looking back. He didn't get far before footsteps followed him. Jungkook. He stopped but didn't turn. I meant what I said on the roof, Jimin said. I'm done hiding. Jungkook faced him, eyes tired. You're done now because it's already broken. Jimin stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then let me be broken honestly. Honesty without timing is just damage control, Jungkook replied. You want redemption, I wanted partnership. Jimin's breath hitched. You think I don't love you enough to fight? I think you love me, Jungkook said quietly. I just don't think you trust love to survive the world. Jimin's shoulders sagged. And you do. I trust myself now, Jungkook answered. That's the difference. They stood there, inches apart, the space between them loaded with years of unfinished conversations. Jimin reached out, then stopped himself, fingers curling back into a fist. I don't know how to fix this, Jimin admitted. Jungkook nodded once. That's the first honest thing you've said without being afraid. Jimin's eyes filled, but he didn't look away. If I let you go, will you hate me? Jungkook's expression softened, pain flickering across his face. No, but I won't wait anymore. Jimin swallowed hard. Then I'll live with that. Jungkook took a step back, creating space on purpose this time. I hope you do. He walked away, steady, deliberate. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it did, and he was finally listening to that pain instead of silencing it. Jimin remained in the hallway long after Jungkook disappeared, realizing that choosing silence had once felt like control, but choosing to speak now meant accepting something far harder. That love, when left unfinished too long, doesn't end in explosion, but in a quiet, irreversible distance that no words can cross back over. The first scream came from outside the building. Jungkook froze mid-step, hand still on the glass door, the sound slicing through the morning like shattered glass. Reporters, dozens of them. Cameras raised, voices overlapping, names shouted like accusations. Jeon, is it true you were abandoned on stage? Jimin, did you choose your career over HIM? Was this a breakup or a publicity stunt? The doors slid open anyway. Flashbulbs exploded. Jungkook's vision whitened for a second, his ears ringing as questions slammed into him from every direction. Security tried to form a barrier, but the chaos was already alive, hungry. Jungkook, someone yelled. Did Jimin refuse to stand with you? He stopped walking. The guards stiffened. One whispered urgently, Sir, keep moving. Jungkook didn't. He turned slowly, eyes sharp, jaw tight. Stop filming, he said, not loud but dangerous in its calm. The shouting only intensified. Did he break your heart? Is Jimin ashamed of you? Were you ever really together? Something in Jungkook snapped, not loudly, not violently, but completely. I stood alone, he said into the storm, voice steady, cutting through the noise. That's all you need to know. Security rushed him forward, but the words were already out there, irreversible. Inside the building, Jimin watched the footage unfold on a screen, breath shallow, chest burning. He saw Jungkook's face, controlled, wounded, dignified, and felt something inside him tear open with brutal clarity. This is my fault, Jimin said hoarsely. A manager snapped back. This is a crisis. No, Jimin said, standing abruptly. This is cowardice catching up to me. He walked out before anyone could stop him. The lobby doors burst open, and suddenly Jimin was there, soaked in flashing lights, surrounded by gasps and shouted names. The crowd surged again, frenzy renewed. Jimin, why did you stay silent? Are you confirming the rift? Jungkook turned sharply. His eyes met Jimin's across the chaos. For a moment, the world narrowed to just them. Jimin pushed past security, voice rising, raw and unfiltered. Enough. The shouting faltered, surprised. Jimin stepped beside Jungkook, close enough that their arms brushed. The contact sent a shock through both of them, familiar, dangerous. I stayed silent because I was afraid, Jimin said loudly, clearly. Not because I didn't care, not because he meant nothing. Jungkook's breath caught. Jimin. I'm not done, Jimin said, voice shaking but relentless. I let fear decide for me. I let it hurt the person I love. The word love detonated the crowd. Jungkook turned to him, eyes blazing. Don't do this here. This is exactly where I need to do it, Jimin shot back, pain and anger spilling free. I don't get to hide anymore. A reporter shouted, Are you admitting a relationship? Jimin didn't look away from Jungkook. I'm admitting I failed him. Jungkook's composure cracked. You don't get to rewrite last night just because the world is watching. Jimin's voice dropped, desperate. I'm not rewriting it, I'm owning it. The cameras caught everything. The tremor in Jimin's hands, the way Jungkook's eyes glossed despite his effort to stay steady. You're too late, Jungkook said quietly, and doing this publicly doesn't make it brave. Jimin swallowed hard. Then tell me where to be brave. Jungkook stared at him for a long moment, the weight of years pressing between them. You should have been brave when it was just us. Silence rippled outward, heavy and stunned. Jimin nodded slowly, devastation etched into his face. You're right. Security finally pulled them apart, guiding Jungkook toward the exit. As he was led away, Jungkook looked back once more. I loved you without conditions, he said. I just needed you to choose me without fear. Jimin didn't chase him this time. He stood still as Jungkook disappeared into the car, the door closing with a final, echoing thud. The crowd erupted again, speculation exploding, narratives spinning out of control. But Jimin barely heard it. The noise faded into a dull roar as the truth settled in his chest. Speaking up had come too late. Silence had cost him everything, and even now, with the world watching, there was nothing left to say that could bring Jungkook back to stand beside him. Night fell like a verdict. Jungkook sat alone in the backseat of the van as it cut through the city, neon lights smearing across the tinted windows like bruises. His phone buzzed nonstop in his hand, messages from members, managers, numbers he didn't recognize, but one name never appeared. That absence hurt more than the noise. He turned the phone face down. Home, the driver asked quietly. No, Jungkook said after a beat. Anywhere else. The van rerouted. Silence filled the space again, but this time Jungkook didn't fight it. He let it press in, let it sting. He told himself this was what choosing himself felt like. It just didn't feel like relief yet. Across the city, Jimin stood alone in a rehearsal room with the lights off, the only illumination coming from his phone screen replaying the footage he already knew by heart. Jungkook's voice. His own confession. The exact moment everything became irreversible. A manager's voice echoed faintly from the hallway. We need to talk strategy. Jimin didn't answer. Another knock, harder. Jimin. Go away, Jimin said, voice flat. The door opened anyway. This is serious. Sponsors are asking questions. There are consequences. I know, Jimin snapped, turning. His eyes were red, furious, exhausted. I finally know. The manager stiffened. You shouldn't have said what you said. Jimin laughed, sharp and broken. That's funny. That's exactly what Jungkook been telling me for years, just in reverse. He grabbed his jacket and walked past them. Outside, the air was cold, biting. Jimin walked without direction, footsteps heavy, mind racing. He replayed Jungkook's last look over and over, the way love and resolve had coexisted painfully in his eyes. He found himself at a small bar they used to sneak into years ago, back when anonymity was possible. The sign flickered. The smell of alcohol and old wood hit him the second he stepped inside. Jimin, the bartender asked, startled. Just a drink, Jimin said. Something strong. He drank too fast, then another. His phone buzzed. Jungkook's name flashed across the screen. His breath stopped. He answered immediately. Jungkook. Don't, Jungkook said, voice low, tight. If this is another public apology, save it. I'm not recording, Jimin said. No one's here, it's just me. Silence stretched. Why did you do it? Jungkook finally asked. Why today in front of everyone? Because I couldn't stand the idea of the world thinking you were alone because you weren't worth choosing, Jimin said, words tumbling out. I couldn't let that be the story. And you think that was your choice to make? Jungkook shot back. Jimin flinched. No, I think I've been stealing your choices for a long time. Jungkook exhaled shakily. You don't get it. I didn't need you to defend me. I needed you to stand with me when it mattered. I was afraid, Jimin said again, quieter now. And I hate that it sounds like an excuse. Because it is, Jungkook replied. Fear stopped being an explanation when it started shaping my life. Jimin closed his eyes. I know. You say that a lot lately. I'm learning too late, Jimin said, but I am learning. Jungkook's voice softened despite himself. Learning doesn't fix damage. No, Jimin agreed, but it changes who I am after. The line went quiet. Jimin could hear Jungkook breathing, uneven, close to breaking. I loved you, Jungkook said, the past tense cutting deep. I loved you so much it scared me how small I made myself just to stay. Jimin's hand shook around the glass. I never wanted you to be small. But you needed me quiet, Jungkook said, and that made me disappear. Tears slipped down Jimin's face, unrestrained now. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, Jungkook said, because I don't have it in me. Another pause, longer this time. I'm leaving for a while, Jungkook said. I need space where your fear doesn't get to follow me. Jimin's chest tightened. How long? I don't know, Jungkook answered honestly. Long enough to hear my own voice again. Jimin nodded even though Jungkook couldn't see it. Then go, I won't stop you. That's new, Jungkook murmured. I won't be the one who cages you anymore, Jimin said, even if that means I lose you completely. Jungkook swallowed. That might already be true. The call ended without goodbye. Jimin sat there long after, the bar's noise fading into a dull hum. For the first time, he didn't reach for silence to protect himself. He let the pain stay, unmuted, undeniable. Somewhere across the city, Jungkook stared out a window at a skyline that felt unfamiliar, finally understanding that love unfinished doesn't always explode. Sometimes it lingers, aching, honest, and heavy, forcing both people to live with the truth of who they were when it mattered most. The airport smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee, a place designed for leaving without looking back. Jungkook stood near the window, hood pulled low, watching planes taxi under a sky the color of dull steel. Every announcement scraped against his nerves. Departures, delays, final calls, words that felt personal now. His phone buzzed. He almost ignored it. It was Jimin. It was a message from a producer overseas, offering time, space, a project far from everything that had just imploded. Jungkook stared at the screen, then typed yes before he could second-guess himself. The decision settled in his chest with a strange mix of relief and grief. Mr. Jeon, a staff member said gently, boarding. As he stepped forward, another voice cut through the terminal. Jeon. The sound of his name, said like that, raw and reckless, made his entire body go still. He turned. Jimin stood just past the security barrier, breathless, eyes wild, hair disheveled like he'd run the entire way. No managers, no guards, just him, exposed in a public place that had never been kind to truth. You said you wouldn't stop me, Jungkook said, voice tight. I'm not, Jimin replied. I just couldn't let you leave without hearing this. People stared, phones lifted, whispers sparked like static. Jungkook clenched his jaw. This isn't private. I know, Jimin said. That's the point. He took a step closer, lowering his voice but not his intensity. I spent years choosing silence because I thought love needed protection. I was wrong. Love needed courage, and I didn't have it. Jungkook's eyes burned. You're saying this now because you're afraid. Yes, Jimin said immediately, and because I'm done pretending fear is wisdom. Jungkook laughed bitterly. You don't get to rewrite who you were just because you're standing in an airport. I'm not rewriting, Jimin said. I'm confessing. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped when they recognized them fully. Jungkook stepped closer too, voice low and dangerous. You humiliated me in front of the world. I know, Jimin said. Tears spilling freely now. And I will live with that shame forever, but I won't let the world believe you were disposable. That belief didn't come from them, Jungkook snapped. It came from you. The words hit hard. Jimin flinched but didn't retreat. Then let me say this clearly, without hiding, without silence. I loved you when I was quiet. I love you now when it costs me everything. Jungkook's breath caught despite himself. Love isn't a performance. I know, Jimin said. That's why I'm not asking you to stay. The admission stunned him. I'm asking you to remember that what we had was real, Jimin continued. That you weren't wrong for wanting more. That I failed, not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't know how to be brave. Jungkook looked at him for a long time. The noise of the terminal faded, replaced by memories he hadn't invited back. Late nights, shared laughter, unspoken promises. I'm tired, Jungkook said quietly. Tired of being the place where your fear rests. Jimin nodded, tears streaking down his face. Then let me carry it alone. A final boarding call echoed overhead. Jungkook took a step back. I'm leaving, he said. Not to punish you, to save myself. Jimin swallowed hard. I know. For a moment, neither moved. Then Jungkook did something unexpected. He stepped forward and pulled Jimin into a brief, fierce hug. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acknowledgement. Closure sharp enough to hurt. Be brave, Jungkook murmured near Jimin's ear. Not for me, for yourself. Jimin clutched his jacket like it was the last solid thing left. I will. Jungkook let go first. He turned and walked toward the gate, shoulders squared, steps steady. He didn't look back. Jimin stood there long after, the weight of the moment settling into his bones. People stared. Cameras clicked. But for the first time, the noise didn't matter. Silence no longer felt like safety. It felt like a warning he would never ignore again. As Jungkook disappeared down the jet bridge, the truth settled quietly but firmly between them. Some loves don't end because they aren't strong enough, but because they arrive at courage at different times. And timing, once missed, leaves marks that even honesty can't erase. The studio overseas was quiet in a way Jungkook wasn't used to. No frantic footsteps, no whispered warnings, no eyes measuring every word he spoke. Just wood floors, soft lights, and a city humming far below the windows. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like standing in the aftermath of a storm, surrounded by debris that hadn't finished falling. Again, the producer said gently from behind the glass. Jungkook nodded and adjusted the headphones. The music started, low, aching, built around pauses that felt intentional, dangerous. He sang into the microphone, voice rower than usual, letting the ache through because hiding it no longer felt necessary. Every note carried something unsaid, something he'd swallowed for too long. When the take ended, silence followed. Not the suffocating kind, the listening kind. That was different, the producer said. You sound like someone who stopped apologizing for existing. Jungkook gave a tired smile. I think I did. Across the ocean, the noise was anything but quiet. Jimin stood in a conference room that felt suddenly too small, walls closing in under the weight of headlines scrolling across a screen. Speculation had evolved into accusation, silence into narrative. Why didn't you deny it sooner? A manager demanded. You let the story write itself. Jimin's eyes were hollow but steady, because the story wasn't wrong. A stunned pause followed. You're risking everything, someone said sharply. Do you understand that? Yes, Jimin replied. I also understand what it costs not to. He stood up, hands flat on the table. I'm done letting fear decide who I hurt. That night, Jimin went live without warning. No script, no prepared statement. Just him sitting in a dim room, eyes clear and unguarded. The comments exploded instantly. I stayed silent because I was afraid, he said calmly. Not because I didn't care, and that fear hurt someone I loved. The word sent shockwaves. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Jimin continued. I'm not asking for understanding. I'm taking responsibility. Somewhere in another country, Jungkook watched the stream on mute, heart racing despite himself. He turned the volume up. I don't expect him to come back, Jimin said, voice wavering for the first time. I only want the truth to exist, even if it costs me. Jungkook exhaled slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. But something loosened in his chest, something that had been clenched since the night he stood alone on that stage. Later, his phone rang. He stared at the screen for a long time before answering. You shouldn't call. I know, Jimin said. His voice sounded older. I just needed you to hear it from me before the world twists it. I heard it, Jungkook replied. All of it. Silence followed, charged but no longer hostile. I'm not asking anything, Jimin said quickly. I swear. I know, Jungkook said, and that's why this feels different. Jimin swallowed. Does it help? Jungkook considered the question. It doesn't erase anything, he said, but it stops the bleeding. Jimin let out a shaky breath. That's more than I deserve. Stop deciding what you deserve, Jungkook said quietly. That was always your problem. A small, broken laugh escaped Jimin. You still know exactly where to hit. You made it easy, Jungkook replied, not cruelly, just honestly. They talked longer than either planned. Not about fixing things, not about going back, about music, about exhaustion, about how strange it felt to breathe without watching the world's reaction first. I don't know who I am without hiding, Jimin admitted. Jungkook leaned back against the studio wall, eyes closing. You'll figure it out. Just don't make someone else disappear while you do. When the call ended, neither of them felt saved, but neither felt trapped either. Weeks passed. Jungkook's song leaked before it was meant to. The lyrics were unmistakable, about standing alone, about loving someone who mistook silence for safety. The internet ignited, debates raging, lines drawn. Jimin listened to it alone, sitting on the floor of his apartment, back against the couch. When the final note faded, he pressed his forehead to his knees and let himself cry, not out of regret alone, but recognition. The song wasn't an attack. It was a farewell told honestly. And for the first time, both of them understood the same truth at the same time. Love unfinished doesn't always ask to be completed. Sometimes it asks to be honored for what it was, and released for what it could never become without courage shared, not borrowed. The last night came quietly. Jungkook stood alone on a balcony overlooking a foreign city, the air cool against his skin, the lights below steady and indifferent. His song had finally been released officially, no longer a leak, no longer a rumor. It belonged to the world now, and strangely, that made it hurt less. He had said everything he needed to say inside it. There were no words left pressing against his ribs, begging to be freed. His phone buzzed once. A message from Jimin. I heard it live tonight. I didn't move until it ended. Jungkook stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I hope you listened. I did, Jimin wrote, every word. Silence followed, not the old kind that suffocated, but the kind that waited without demanding anything. Jimin was sitting on the floor of his apartment back home, lights off, the city's glow slipping through the window like a distant memory. The noise had finally faded. The headlines had moved on. What remained was the quiet reckoning he could no longer escape. For the first time in his life, he didn't reach for silence as a shield. He let it sit beside him, uncomfortable and honest. I'm learning how to live without hiding, he typed. Some days I fail, but I don't disappear anymore. Jungkook exhaled slowly. That's enough, he replied. For you. The words landed gently, without bitterness, without hope disguised as mercy. Acceptance, plain and unromantic. They didn't talk again that night. They didn't need to. Weeks later, Jungkook stood on a smaller stage, no cameras inches from his face, no expectations choking the air. When he sang, he felt present, fully, fiercely present. The applause was warm, human, real. For the first time, he didn't scan the crowd for someone missing. Back home, Jimin watched a clip someone posted online. Jungkook looked different, lighter, grounded, not healed completely, but whole enough to stand without shrinking. Jimin smiled through tears he didn't wipe away. Love hadn't ended in flames or scandal or grand declarations. It had ended in truth, spoken too late to save them, but early enough to save themselves. Jungkook had learned that choosing himself was not abandonment, it was survival. Jimin had learned that silence could protect you from the world, but it could never protect love. They moved forward separately, carrying the same memory from opposite directions. Not as a wound anymore, but as a scar, proof that something real had existed, even if it couldn't last. And somewhere between what was lost and what remained, the unfinished love finally rested. Not resolved, not erased, but gently laid down, honored for what it had been, and released for what it could never become.